because I think a lot of people search for confirmation. They have a hunch, they have like an idea of something, and maybe they hold Bitcoin, but then if it breaks down or like crashes down like 10%, 20%, 30%, like it does now, they really search for someone to say, you are fine. Like, hold on to it. It will be tremendous. It goes to 10 million. It does all those things. It's almost that like hand holding. And I always say to those people, like, if Bitcoin goes down by 20%, 30%, and you're fearful on that, the only thing that you did wrong is not study deep enough, not look at it deep enough. Because if you have conviction and you know what Bitcoin is, you know this thing is actually great, and it going down actually means you have the great thing just cheaper right now, which is a great thing. Like, you get more freedom, you get more sovereignty, you get more UTXOs. If you know where Bitcoin is going, that's actually a great thing for you to do. And there's a lot of like confirmation searchers, a lot of people that, oh, I trust this guy and I want him to say Bitcoin is still fine and he is still holding. Like, there's a lot of those things going on, especially online.
Yeah, that's true. Having said that, Roman, you need sort of like two things. I think as humans we tend to like to get some confirmation, because otherwise you're a lonely guy. And I've seen in my own career, I talked about that in 2005. My boss, Craig Lipman, Big Short, by Gosling. Everybody should watch that. It's a great movie. And I was second guy. I'm not in a movie. People like my trade is not me. I was the last trade against Morgan Stanley, where they lost a lot. We won a lot. We shorted the subprime market in 2005. And everybody wanted to buy it, and we were the only guy in town who said you should short. We went to all the conferences. It was funny. Like in the room next to us, or my room was like all the guys. It was filled with people. It was like, oh, how can I buy more of that? How can it be structured subprime? And I in my room, I've like one experience I remember was like in Arizona. I flew down there, and the room next to me, like in the room I came after, the speaker talked about mortgage origination, subprime, best thing, slice spread was invented. And then I came. Craig was on the panel. So I came and gave my speech. And it was so bizarre. I walked in, I sort of like knew Craig and like, it's typical Deutsche Bank short story. And they pretty much left the room. It was like three guys sitting there, like two were from our bank. I'm like, okay, that's strange. Nobody wants to listen to me. So you feel very lonely. And you really ask yourself, no, I'm not the smartest guy on the planet, neither is my boss. So how did that happen that all these Harvard guys think they're complete morons? And these questions were asked by our management from Frankfurt, like, and London, like, who the F are you guys that you think you know something, which these guys were like all the, like, do you have a Harvard degree? No, I don't have. Greg, like, I don't freaking, I don't know, but not really. What's Harvard? So, and of course, it's very tough to go through that. And then you see as well, the market is always going more and more up, works against you as well. So, but if you study that, if you really get very, what you say, very deep into that, and you say, you know, maybe we are really morons, and maybe we are really wrong, and everybody else is right. Could be. Unlikely, but okay. But if we are right, it's great for us. And it was. And what you learned as well, that then during the crisis, everybody was shell-shocked. And so were we, by the way. We didn't expect that outcome. And suddenly you look again towards the others, and especially your bosses, your authority. Oh, these guys, they know how to fix that. They had no clue. The system always went down, almost. They didn't know what to do. And I think this is the lesson as well. If you think that the Michael Saylor gonna rescue there, then you shouldn't be in the space. As you say, on the other hand, of course, it's important as well that people make certain investment stuff which they didn't study themselves because they trust. But therefore, who should you trust? It's important as well to trust people. I trust people with a certain track record. I trust people who are very open, say, I don't know. I cannot tell you. I will be, and that's what I tell guys. I'm not going to tell you Bitcoin will be at 150 next week. You see that online right now. I can't. I wouldn't tell you that. But I can tell you this is my biggest argument is power law, and what I've seen it with full set, it gives me a lot of like, I think a lot of conviction and there are so many other elements and on top of that I was coming from this different system, so that looks like a real big thing to me, and it's I think as the biggest thing I can imagine what we're gonna have during our lifetime in the financial world. And I wouldn't say that if I didn't think so. And people know me for a long time, and they might have their opinion, but it's about like, yes, can I be wrong? Absolutely, but I think it's about being truthful as well, and not just trying to sell something. I think that's maybe is an important topic which fits into here. But I think right now I see in the Bitcoin world, which is not healthy, you see a lot of copycats of the same idea, for example, like a sale idea. And suddenly this whole thing becomes into a very bit salesy type of story. Oh, it's always going to go up. It's always going to. I think you're going to attract people which, so like, some people I heard having this, like some Bitcoin treasuries firms, I'm not going to come up with a name, like the very smaller one. I don't even think they know what Bitcoin is, even in the simplest way. And suddenly they're like, oh, how can I make 10 times the money? How can I make 100 times the money? So some will do very well. I'm not saying it's all, but there's big differences, and some of them will hurt people, and I don't like that. But here, we adults, we have to make our free decisions. So therefore, trust is important as well. But trust people you followed for, personally best, and you followed for a while, who even admit as well if they're wrong. That's very important. If somebody say, I was wrong here, it's very important. That was on Wall Street, I learned that. If you are sitting on a trade, the trade is wrong, you lose money. You have to say, I adapt to that. I say, I was wrong, I was stupid. I lose money here. And be open about that and move on. And not say, yeah, but look, and because of the guy here, I got construct. No, 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 no. Don't do the gaslighting. So I would say, do not trust people who gaslight. And that's easy to figure out.
Yeah, taking responsibility for your own actions and owning decisions is like really big. Do you see, because of the treasury companies and because like also BlackRock and like more and more of TradFi coming into Bitcoin, that like Wall Street and those guys are now slowly waking up to what Bitcoin is?
Yeah, I can see that. Absolutely, absolutely. I think ETF is a big thing, was a big thing. Now, it's less for Wall Street because ETF is a very simple product. It's like exchange traded fund that don't need a lot of people. The fees are little, so investment bankers are not even involved. So that's not really their fund side. Investment bankers like, of course, MicroStrategy, because they have a lot of like stuff to place and constant to place. Now, if MicroStrategy places preferred shares, which I think he placed around 7-8 billion of them, then investment banks always take a cut. And of course, let's say they make a lot of living out of it. So he feeds quite a few of these investment bankers with that. So he's a good client of Wall Street. And therefore, Wall Street, of course, and say, oh, if that guy gives us so much money, how can we create more of these type of clients? That's what you see there. For that, you suddenly see all these guys coming out of the woods. And by the way, I think some will be successful. Having said that, right now they're in a tough place, but some you will have, and it always happens, then just a lot of these companies which don't make money are gonna lose people a lot of money. And Wall Street has a tendency to blow things up. They go crazy on an idea, everybody piles in because they have a wonderful machine running. And then if it doesn't work out, they walk the other direction. Is Wall Street really waking up on a bigger level, on a much bigger level, to Bitcoin outside of like MicroStrategy and the ETFs? I'm not sure actually. Do they really believe? Do they really talk about Bitcoin as a potential new way of thinking about money. I don't think so, actually. Because that's speaking to bankers. Most bankers I know, for them, it's no, they actually don't care because they're like, okay, how can I find a way to stand in the middle and make a bit of money? But they're not really studying anything about Bitcoin at all. Like what you said, Robin, do you think they're going to study and listen to your podcast and say, I want to understand? No, because they're very busy. They're always running. And that's okay. Can I make a big buck here? And what's going to be my bonus being paid in January, February next year? And hopefully it's big. So that's the game they are playing, which is a total different one than when you are in the Bitcoin world. So no, I think they just always go for the easy, quick solution and then try to replicate it and scale it up. So if you have one Michael Saylor, they are trying to breed a lot of Michael Saylors on the back of that until it doesn't work anymore, and then I move on. So I think they're still far away.
It's interesting how you said it. How the investment banker thinks, how can I stay in the middle and make money? It's like that's funny.
That was my job for a long time. It's always like when something was going on, the first question you always ask as a trader, how can I get in the middle? That's like it's like I don't have to know anything, but like how can I get in the middle and to make a bit of a there's nothing wrong with that. But what bankers don't do, very important. It's like when you look towards a banker to say he just had an innovation, how he creates something. No, usually whatever they innovate, you should stay away from. That's usually not a good thing. I was unfortunately often on the fabrication of the stuff as well, so I know what I'm talking about. But that's again, it's like the way how can we make money out of that? And I don't think it's an unethical approach. Again, like I don't feel that people do that or that I was a bad guy doing that. Like I don't have an obligation towards counterparties or towards the behavior of people. They make their own decisions, and by the way, they shouldn't have it towards me either. If I lose money on my job, they shouldn't really care, and they don't. And I find it healthy. And that comes back to the Bitcoin. I think people, as you said, they should trust, but ultimately learn as well to be responsible for their own actions and not to say, oh, I thought of that, because nobody going to help you at the end of the day. But that's not only true for Bitcoin. It's your decision you make in life. And Bitcoin, I think it's just a very good way, not just like making money, but I think will happen as well, like to create accountability, to say, this is what I have, this is how I save. And I think it can change your life if you really think deeply. And it took even for me a long time, what actually Bitcoin can do. It grows slowly over time. And there's for some people, but stay away from people who try to sell something to you. That's I would say.
I like that. I have one more. Before that, maybe treasury companies are interesting for me also. I ignored or almost rejected treasury companies for the past 2 years. Now, last week, I was like, okay, I should own a little bit. Like I just buy a little bit of strategy just because like when I have a little exposure, at least then I research deeper and then I can build a better opinion on that and all of that. Like that's the same way I did actually with Bitcoin. The first time I bought Bitcoin, I thought it's a scam. But with buying some, I forced myself to like research it a little bit deeper. How do you think about treasury companies, especially the treasury companies that don't have a business model? Of course, like if a profitable business has Bitcoin on the balance sheet, I think there's nothing wrong with that. But like, how do you look at treasury companies that are just treasury companies to buy more Bitcoin, like 21st Capital with Jack Mallers? I mean, strategies, and I think in their own sphere and their own league, what they're doing, and maybe then also smaller ones that kind of you're seeing.
Great question. I think on a trading level, I think it makes a lot of sense. On a structural level, which I'm now coming back from my Wall Street hat on, because you have on the asset side Bitcoins, which you expect to grow with an annualized compounding rate of, let's say, 35% for the next 10, 15 years. And now you finance that with something where you pay 7-8%. That's a winning trade. You have to do it from the morning to the evening. And in a nutshell, that's exactly what Michael Saylor is doing. It's not doing anything else. And if you really get to know, often when people say, how can certain people become very rich? And I had, I don't know, I wouldn't say it's luck, but I happened through my career, I met quite a few rich people. And rich means not rich what we often think in Europe, what people think. I talk about billions, 10, 20 billion type of people. Like, and first of all, you see they have like 2 arms, a head that don't look different because somehow people think they must look different. They look exactly the same as we do. Some of them are quite dumb, by the way. That's another thing. It's like got there by luck. It's fine. But I thought they were like, but I think what most of these guys have in common is they understand what their own returns has great returns, 20, 30 more percent because they own businesses or their own positions or real estate. And you say, well, I want to leverage so much, which actually worthless paper money. It's called dollar, a euro. So I finance that. So that even gives them more wealth. So therefore, and it's interesting, they never really have cash because they finance everything. And if they need money, they say, I go to the bank and get a new loan, which gives me cash to do something, to either buy more of it because I like real estate, because it grows so quickly. So based on that, I think Michael Saylor, yeah, this is absolutely fair. It's a very simple business model. It's almost like bizarrely simple. Say, Bitcoin does what it does. It grows with 30, 35%. I have to finance it with something which is not, which actually devaluates over time. Or as my old boss used to say, now really to sum it up, the Bitcoin Treasury on a bigger scale, Craig Clapman, his saying was always, go long quality and short shit. I think that's pretty much what you have here. Quality is Bitcoin and the short is like financing in fiat. So, so that yes. But now, do I think that now people should get involved, like buying all this random stuff and like, okay, there's this little guy. Now you could argue in the real estate market, you have a lot of REITs, real estate investment trusts, there's tons of them. So it's an idea which was created, I think, in the 70s and then suddenly exploded. And there are many of them. But here you could argue that over slightly different real estates, it's not all over the same, and you need operating expertise. I think Bitcoin treasury companies, you need access to the capital markets. You need size. You have to be able to scale stuff properly. And Michael Saylor, I think, has a bit of a scale issue because it's so big that at some point, how much pressures and controls can he place? But that's scale. Everybody knows him. But if you're a little guy, banks don't really care about you. You don't really get a loan. Everything becomes like, it becomes just more like a marketing story. There's nothing real behind. So I would stay away from that. That's the way it's tough. Maybe even a little guy can become very big if you have a good idea or it's like figures it out. But usually for the little guys, if they have an operating business behind, I think that can work. But just like to replicate Michael Saylor, I think that's that's very tough because it's like a plane. You know, you need certain conditions that you're able to that the plane takes off, and not every little thing gonna fly. It's just gonna drop. So here's the same thing. You need the right engine. You need the right wings, you need the right technology, everything has to be, and then like otherwise it's not gonna fly. So, and I think that's the same with the Bitcoin companies to think like, no, we look towards Michael Saylor. Now you're never gonna be a Boeing. Maybe nowadays you don't want to have Boeing. So Airbus, you're never gonna fly. And I think that's what happened with a lot of his small Bitcoin companies. They're never gonna fly. And what happens next here, and that's now really become Wall Street language here. Right now, the Bitcoin treasury companies, Michael Saylor, the biggest by far, with 680,000 Bitcoin or something like that. He trades at a multiple of NAV, so pretty much that is the multiple which everybody talks about, which compares the underlying number of Bitcoin you have and the value of them of around 1.2, 1.3. So pretty much what it means if you invest, if you actually invest $1.28, you get actually worth Bitcoin worth $1 only. That's pretty much what it means in a nutshell. But more and more Bitcoin companies, the smaller one, are trading below one. And my prediction is, Robin, they're not just going to be staying below one, they're going to drop to 0.5 and even lower. So because there's no liquidity, nobody cares. Nobody gets out. So everybody gets hurt. And banks won't finance that. Investors don't have interest in that. So it will be a very, very tough thing. So I think for Bitcoin treasury companies, size doesn't matter.
Interesting. So Strategy has such a good position, not only because they are early, but because they have come to a huge size of having now like over 600,000 Bitcoin and liquidity and access to the market. Now they're also with the European project, and the other ones are just too small to matter to banks and give them loans and those products.
Absolutely. Jack Mallers has like great backers behind. I think it's Tether behind, if I remember correctly. It's SoftBank. It's my former employer, Ken Fitzgerald. I work like that's how they set it up. And then of course you have Michael Saylor. I think it's for others. It's going to be very, very tough. So I like the idea very much. I thought, but in order that the idea works, you have to start very big at day one. Yeah, Jack Mallers got that. Michael Saylor got that. You have to start with a huge, not only Bitcoin, this thing has to have decent size. But if you drop it like 200 million or in the teens, 20, 30, 40 million, it's almost impossible to get out of there. How would you do that? And I think very likely investors going to lose patience and they're going to get hurt. That's my prediction. Now you will say it doesn't matter because Bitcoin ultimately going to go up, but again, what does it tell me? If Bitcoin may go from 100,000 to 300,000, but your NAV drops from 90 to 30, like still haven't changed. And by the way, these companies do exist. I'm not going to quote it now, but offline I will tell you. There's a company been around for a long time, actually even operating. They have 3,700 Bitcoins. Their share price, and since 2016, 17, their share price is below the 2017 share price. People should study that. That's my prediction. What's going to happen to most of these Bitcoin treasury companies? Bitcoin since then went up 10 times, and this company went down. And how do you feel about that? And I think that is a type of risk I see with these Bitcoin treasury companies, the smaller one.
Now, is it fair to say that if Bitcoin is successful and becomes huge and dominant and almost like a global money, that the company that owns the most Bitcoin will also be the biggest company in terms of like maybe strategy, maybe another company that can outrun them, even though it gets harder and harder?
Oh, okay. So yeah, that's yeah, that's something. Yeah, you could argue, of course, if let's assume take MicroStrategy for a moment. Right now, I think the market cap is around 66 billion, $65 billion. It's almost like, let's call it like, and I have 680,000 Bitcoins. So of course, if Bitcoin were to go up over the next 20 years by a factor of 100, which Michael Saylor says, which I think is according to power law, something you should actually expect, then we suddenly talk about a company of value of like 6 trillion now, because yes, that and that, maybe 10 trillion, maybe 10 trillion. Now it's not going to be the biggest company. Nvidia, as we speak today, is already at 4 or 5, no, sold off 4 to 5 trillion. So A while ago, I might have said, yeah, he has a chance. I think it's going to be tougher. But having said that, if you have now, and that's very important, if you now have a Bitcoin Treasury company, which has underlying businesses as well, in the Bitcoin ecosystem somehow, then suddenly the underlying businesses, if Bitcoin goes up by a factor 100, that might even go up by a factor 1,000. And by the way, I don't want to say certain things offline. We can talk about that. Personal experience. That is possible then. I think that if something that's even like go down to 100 times, so say Bitcoin goes up 10 times in the next 8 to 9 years, let's assume that. Then if you're in the ecosystem of Bitcoin, suddenly they profit much more. It's not all time. For example, in mining, not necessarily true that the miner is going to be that's still a great investment, but other stuff like infrastructure can really outgrow and outperform Bitcoin massively. So if you combine that, the treasury plus underlying operating businesses, and I think that's what I see as a real company which has a chance. If Bitcoin does what I think it will do, becoming potentially one of the biggest, maybe biggest company, is to say, I start off with Bitcoin as my treasury. That's what I have. But this is not like I have it and never going to do anything with that. No, that's my benchmark. If I think I have something which can make much more money than Bitcoin, but it's because I know what Bitcoin does, I have a view, and I do that over and over, then I have a chance suddenly to make a lot of money. The interesting thing is you have to be much more careful where to invest in, because if you have Bitcoin, you will say, I'm not going to give it away for something which might make 10%, 15% every year. That's what we have currently. People say, if I can make 10% or 8%, I'm happy, because you lose money having money in a bank. But here you say, if I have Bitcoin, I should make 30, 35%. I have to find something which beats that. That's very rare, but in operating businesses, you have that. And that's where you have Bitcoin, but ultimately you invest in operating businesses. Then you might end up with something which could ultimately be the biggest company in the world.
We discussed a highly profitable business that chooses Bitcoin as their savings technology.
Absolutely, absolutely, and then you can always use new cash coming through the system to invest in Bitcoin, and then say, okay, now I have another opportunity. I put it that way. Absolutely. So I think that is so. By the way, and that's another interesting point you raise. What I've seen lately is that a lot of unsuccessful businesses in the US, especially as well, like some of these biotech things is like, it's not going anywhere. Let's call it Bitcoin Treasury, and the share price pops up. That reminds me, I'm a bit older than you are. That reminds me of the .com, where like people like, I'm now a .com. It didn't matter what the hell these guys were doing. They didn't have I tell you an interesting story of that one. The ultimate bubbling.com wasn't really like that. I remember I had always with like the Bloomberg, and there was another announcement. Here is now the company.com, and this is what the CEO says. We don't really have a product. We don't really think yet that we know which direction we're going to go to, but we consider product development somehow in the .com world. And the freaking price went up. So pretty much we talked about an empty company, which we just put .com on, it was about billions.
The first thing that every Bitcoiner does, and the most important activity that every Bitcoiner keeps on doing, is buying Bitcoin. And I personally use Relay to buy and sometimes also spend or sell my Bitcoin. And there are two main reasons why I do so. The first one is it's Bitcoin only. They do not do any shit coins. They do not do any cryptos, any stocks, or anything else. This is a tool, an app that is fully focused only and solely on Bitcoin. The second one is self-custody. They give you the keys to your Bitcoin the moment you buy them. You never give them the control over your Bitcoin, and you don't have to trust them because you can verify that you and only you have the keys to your Bitcoin. There's no third-party risk. There's no freezing of your assets. There's no rug pulling. There's nothing of that. Download Relay, the app, on your phone, or go to relay.app on your browser and use code Robin to save fees and get cheaper Bitcoin. I want to tell you about something very special to me. It's called micro seed. If you hold your Bitcoin in self-custody, and you should, you know how critical it is to secure your seed phrase. You should not have them on paper. You should not have them on anything else than titanium. With micro seed, you can engrave your 12 or 24 word seed phrase, the entire seed phrase, onto a 1-inch small washer. Yes, just one washer. All 24 words on that one washer. You can hide that thing everywhere. And even better, you don't need to buy a new kit every time you have to get a new wallet. You can make unlimited backups because MicroSeed is not selling the washer. MicroSeed is selling the device that stamps the washer. So you get the full kit with the device, with the washers, with the hammer, with everything you need to get started today, and you can make with that unlimited amount of backups. Go now to microseed.io.